Good afternoon. Welcome to this webinar today. Today we are talking about managing student progress in Amathuba, and we are going to focus on 3 tools specifically, but we'll share that in a brief moment with you just now. I'm going to start sharing my screen, so if I look towards the right, it's simply because I have a second screen that is active there, and that means that I can still follow along the chat. Great. So as always, feel free to unmute yourself, ask questions. You can raise a hand. And then if you raise a hand, maybe Lubabalo, if you could just, notify me. I don't currently see the participant list. Okay, so going into Amathuba, for the previous 2 webinars, we have looked at how do we navigate Amathuba, and then yesterday we briefly looked at how to build content and how to structure your content on Amathuba through the lessons tool or the unit, how to create units. And today we're going to look at when your students are active on the platform, how do you know what they are doing, and what are some of the tools that you can use in terms of monitoring student progress. So in this webinar, am I sharing my screen? The right one, can you see it?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the webinar outcomes, we're going to look at the Classlist tool, how to access certain Amathuba features through the Classlist tool. For example, sending emails, how to track a student's progress with the class progress tool. It's a different tool. Then you can create or use the user progress summary to easily track a student's performance, and then how to create and use checklists. Again, I said, feel free to ask questions or unmute yourself. If you want to also, you can follow along in your own environment. Just for the sake of clarity, the roles and permissions will not allow you. So in a student role, you won't be able to see some of these tools. So if you are just enrolled as a student on your current Amathuba courses, you may have limited functionality in terms of what you see. You need to be enrolled in a lecturer role or at least a support role on Amathuba to be able to view these things. Okay, so just briefly to activate some of the prior knowledge and lived experiences, I want to ask you, how do you currently in your teaching practice, or have you in the past managed student progress in courses in your teaching practice? Or if you are not a teacher yourself, how do you know, are the lecturers actually tracking student performance or student progress in their courses? Just going to give us a few minutes for people to type their answers, or if you want to, feel free to also unmute yourself. We're a small group, so that's also very welcome.
Hi, Nadine. I'm happy to chime in.
Yes, Anna. Hello.
So at the GSB, we have quite small programs, and we have a very dedicated support structure for students. So it's a very manual process of looking at every individual student, following up on them, the lecturer and the coordinator, combining information based on what they see from students. So we do it, but it is very manual.
Okay, which becomes tedious and time consuming, I would imagine. Yes. Melissa, Liz? I see Melissa posted a combo of site stats and watching and stats in the tools themselves. Okay. Analytics. Okay. So tracking progress there.
Similar for us. And we also rely on Gradebook, because we put whatever they've got to do on Gradebook, if it's for marks or for DP. So Gradebook has been key.
Okay, and the problem with Gradebook is that it only gives us a small window in terms of how the student is performing and what they are accessing, right? So it is a tool, but sometimes we want to know a little bit more.
Yeah, that's where site stats was useful, yes.
Yes, okay, good. So let's see what Amathuba allows us. Okay, so as I said, depending on the role permissions, students, you can see on the right-hand side here, the student, and if you're enrolled in a student role or in an observer role, you won't have access to creating checklists. You will only be able to see them. The class list, obviously, we're not going to share the class list with the whole class. So that's the privilege of the lecturer and the support staff. And then the administrator, tutors, and the designer roles also have access to these tools. Okay, so why do we track class progress? Just very briefly so that we can frame the conversation, Lubabalo is going to do the demonstration for us today on Amathuba. So just to activate just to start the conversation, first of all, we want to view user profiles and or maybe email users, depending on if you see certain things, maybe students weren't active in certain instances, then you want to send an email only to, let's say, target a very specific group of students and not just keep on sending hundreds and thousands of emails to students that's not applicable to them. So we really want to tailor conversation so that when they receive an email, they know, okay, this is applicable to me. Track user progress using different indicators of performance. So this is how Brightspace or Amathuba, how they refer to the various metrics that we use. There's quite a few of them. The first one is system access. So system access, you will see when you go into, when you open it, you will see there's two different ones. The one would be system access, meaning that they actually accessed Amathuba. And then there's another one for course access. That is going to tell you whether they accessed when they were on Amathuba, did they open your course or not. So this indicator is just simply telling us what happened within, did they open it or not. It doesn't tell us what they've done on it for this specific indicator. Content completion, what sections have they gone through? Have they gone through the orientation? Have they opened week 1 or however you have structured your course? There's also quiz performance. So did they open the quizzes? What does the performance look like in the quiz? There's grades, that's the grade book list, and then assignments, there's the checklist, and then also the discussions. So it can help you to prepare progress reports if, for example, on a specific student, you can create quite a complete quite a progressive progress report on a specific student. And then also for further consideration that we're not going to look at today, but you can use and set up intelligent agents for students who are falling behind. So I want to say there's almost 2 categories that you can use intelligent agents for. So the first one is if you see students are either not accessing or they're falling behind, you can see they're struggling a bit. Or if there's some of the students that are really active and you want to say, way to go, you are really performing well, you can maybe also set up intelligence agents. So it all depends on the way that you're comfortable in terms of your own teaching practice. Okay, so how can we manage student progress? The 3 tools, as we said. So I want to say today we're going to look at the checklist, class progress, and then also the class list. As you're also going to receive these slides afterwards, I've taken the liberty to actually link the SILT staff resources for each of these tools in the presentation. For those of you that are maybe watching the recording of the video, you can literally access this, and I'm quickly going to go out of my presentation and then just go into, seems like I closed the tab, sorry, but you can see if you just open SILT, silt.uct.ac.za, and you just head over to support and services, Amathuba, and the Amathuba drop down there you see staff resources. And if you open this page, you can scroll down. There's already a few videos, introductory videos. They're getting started, but here at the bottom where it says tool guides. Today we're going to look at Classlist. Directly underneath that, that's class progress. And then checklist is here under activities. So that is if you are interested in finding the SILT resources for each of these. It's a PDF document that you can easily download, print out. It gives you a little bit more detail about the tool and how you can use it in Amathuba. So without further ado, I'm going to stop my screen share and hand over to my very dear colleague Lubabalo, and Vula, the Vula guy I see in the chat. So Lubabala, thank you. Over to you.
Thanks a lot, Nadine. Yeah, I think I'll remain being the Vula guy for now, until 2025 maybe. Good afternoon, colleagues. Yeah, so I'll just be taking you through the class progress tool on Amathuba. I mean, for some of us or most of us that have worked on Vula, um, this class progress would be more similar to the site stats tool. But you'll notice that the more you work on class progress, is that it's actually much better than the site stats tool that we have currently on Vula. It actually, drills down to most of things and actually tells you how far a student has gone through either, the content on how they're performing on, different activities. Yeah, so at least I'm making an assumption that most of us have worked on site stats, so we have an idea. Of course, I would say class progress is more much better than it. It's a much better tool. So I'll try and share my screen, and then I'll just take you through. Of course, the main idea behind class progress is so that, as lecturers or academics, we can get an idea, or get a high level idea of how student access the content on Amathuba or on our courses, their behavior, what is it that they do, and also, we can see how they're performing. You can get a nice summary for the entire class, and also you can also get the summary for one student. So you have that option. Yeah. As Nadine mentioned, on class progress, you have 4 indicators. So indicators of progress. So that she's mentioned, for instance, systems access, content completion summary, quiz performance, and also grade performance. So we'll also look at this. Of course, for us to get a nice class progress report, we need to have a class going on, and we need to have activity or on that site or on that particular course. So it becomes a bit challenging when you don't have much happening on the course to pull out. But I've got a couple of courses that I'll use or that we can use just to demonstrate and to get an idea of how we can manipulate or go through the class progress. Just give me a second while I'm trying to share my screen. Dun, dun, dun. Are there any questions? Maybe you can check, Nadine, while I'm trying to share my screen.
I have a question, but I might be jumping the gun a bit. Just tell me if I am.
Go for it.
When does, in terms of tracking progress, when does it start tracking? I think with the other analytics tool we used to use, I think it was like after the first week only that there was trackable activity. Is it the same with Amathuba?
Sorry, let me just, I've got so many screens running here. Boom, boom, boom. It actually tracks you from the onset. So as you start working, like what I've seen so far is it tracks you from your first login. So for instance, if I create an account today for Melissa, so when you log in to Amathuba, it starts tracking you there from there. So it picks up and it generates that data. So once you get enrolled to a course and you start accessing that course, then you'll start. So it's, I'd say it's in real time. So there's no, as far as I can see, understand that there's no delay. So it shares in real time. Yeah.
Okay, cool, awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So I just need to access a course here. because of my rights in the systems, so I might just need to toggle my view so that I get the same view as a lecturer would get. Just bear with me.
Which course are you going to share, Lubabalo? Then I can just check on.
Yeah, I was just going to go to the self-paced one, but I just need to log in with my other account.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, so it's instead of having so many screens running, I thought let me just, yeah, there we go, much better. So as you can see here, so I've got two courses, so I'll just showcase these two courses, and then I'll give you a much better view on some screenshots that I have. I can't use that course. It's a live course, you know, so I can't really showcase that one, but I'll just show you screens on a course that has more data compared to the ones that I have here. So I'll then navigate to the course. So course that I'm using is the self-paced course. And I think most of us have access to this. Right. So what I'm more interested on is class progress. So the class progress tool is listed under the course info. So I'll just navigate to the course info and then click on class progress. So as I mentioned earlier on, that the way the way that the class progress report is shown, you'll notice that it's basing it on four categories or indicators, which is your systems access, content completed, quizzing, if there are any quizzes, grades, which bases it on the grade report. So as you can see here, there's not much happening on this course because it's just a generic course, but this is how you would see it. For instance, the second column deals with the content completion. So this gives you an idea of how much a particular user has gone through the content. So for instance, here I've got 36 overall, 36 pages, and the person has gone through 8 pieces of that content, or only gone through 8 pages of that content. And there was also a quiz for this one, and that person got 33% of that quiz. Let me just scroll down, just give me a second. You'll notice with this user, it's a bit different. We can see that the person has actually accessed the systems access refers to just logging in to the system. So if I wanted to get more information, for instance, I'll make an example with this one. So this one has covered 22% of the content. If I would like to know which parts of the content has been covered, or the eight pages, I can then click on this. So what it does, it'll then give me a breakdown of the actual content that was covered and how much time was spent on going through those pages. So for instance, here, I can see that the person spent about 19 minutes and went through 8 topics. And these are the topics listed down here. So welcome to Amathuba. It gives me a breakdown that there are actually 4 topics. So, and you'll see that there's a tick at the end or on the far right hand side, which just means that the person completed or went through those pages. So that's just the 4 that they went through, and then that's another 4 they went through. So it's just the Amathuba page templates and also the welcome page. So the other pages were not accessed, as you can see. So the migration process was not accessed. The Amathuba tool guides was not accessed. So to drill down, I will just click on the number of topics there, and I can see which one was the person went through or read through. And also, as you can see on the right hand side, I've got other tools that the class progress generates data on. So if, for instance, there were quizzes, I could just toggle while I'm viewing. So what I'm seeing here, this is just a view for one student, not the entire class. So for this particular student or participant, I can see how they went through the quizzes, if there were any quizzes. In this case, they haven't taken any quiz. and so on, and depending on what I want to see. So the discussions basically would show me, for instance, how discussions would be the forum tool on Vula. So discussion would be how many posts this particular participants posted, topics they posted, and whether they participated on either contributing to a topic or commented on someone's post and so on. So at the current moment, I don't have much data on this particular student. And to exit this, I can just, oh yeah, another important one is this summary. So the summary actually summarizes the entire class progress for that particular student across the different tools here. So it's more of a very high level summary on what the student went through or covered in the course. So I can see, for instance, here, I think this is a better view. And when you want to drill down, you can then click on it. And they've also completed a checklist here. So if I was more interested in seeing what they've completed, I can just click on completed, and I can then see what was completed, the Amathuba staff orientation checklist. So they've completed all the checks on that checklist, for instance. Are there any questions, Nadine?
Melissa just says that it's great that it differentiates between threads contributed to and posts actually authored from scratch.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's for us that have been working on Vula for quite some time. We really struggled to get that, and sometimes even with the stats and grading feature in forums, it didn't give us much. So I'm also happy that it's actually provides so much detail. Yeah, let's see if I can just toggle to another course of mine, which might be different, just to get a different aspect of view of the class progress. Right. Okay, this one is a bit different, but it does it's there's more data for us to look at here. So I can see here, for instance, on these categories, systems access, the person accessed it seven times, the other users 19 times. The second user, Thomas, has not completed any of those quizzes, whereas Tasneem has completed one, and she got that third. So if you looked at the previous page or the previous course, we didn't have, for instance, content or data on the quiz and the grades. So we can then drill down. So if we wanted to see exactly the score for this particular quiz, we can just click on the quiz item, and it'll then take us into a breakdown, a much better breakdown here, where we can then see how many of the quizzes are there. So the person has completed 1 out of 2 quizzes, and their average or score is sitting at, for the first quiz, is 33%. And then we can drill down to that particular quiz. So for instance, this is a quiz that the student completed, and we can see that we can get more information that actually the student attempted this quiz multiple times, and between which date and which date. And we can also go into each attempt to see how they responded on the first attempt. As we can see, there's not much difference in terms of the scoring, but at least we can see that the person attempted it twice, depending on how our quiz was set up. So, I mean, this is something that you would not see with site stats. You'd just see that Lubavalo completed a quiz, and you would not even somewhat have an idea of how much time they spent on the quiz. You had to look at other features to get that kind of information. And we can see that they have not completed the second quiz here. So we can just hide that. And also if you have your quizzes categorized, you could see here that it actually pushes it into categories. So one of my categories was weekly quizzes. So this one remains uncategorized. But if I were to move it to a category, then it will update it also on this side. Yeah. And as I mentioned earlier on, I could just go through all the different tools that interface with class progress to get more information. For instance, if I want to check on the content, I'll just click on content and I can see how much they've covered of the content, lessons, and I can see the topics there, but they've only visited, this is part of the quiz anyway, so they access the quiz via the content page there. Yeah. Systems access. Right. So this gives me a nice breakdown, basically, that they've accessed it in the last 30 days. They've accessed it 7 times, and they last accessed it today. Well, as you can see here. And my understanding is that the absent period just means that number of days that they were away or that they were not accessed the system. And I'm saying this under correction, but looking at the calculations, it looks like that it's basing it on the number of days that the student has been away from the course or has not accessed the course. Yeah.
Bala, maybe we can just mention that when you look at the left and you see all the different performance indicators to the left, and if you can maybe just go back one level to this where the students' names are.
Right.
And by default, Amathuba allows us, it starts with 4 indicators. In this case, it says system access, content completed, quizzing, and grades. If, for example, you have a course and you don't have any quizzes, you can change those 4 levels of indicators depending on what you want it to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So thanks for mentioning that one. So let me just, sorry. So that I'm not, so you could, as Nadine was mentioning, so you could customize the indicators here. So if you don't have quizzes, you could just go to settings and then remove that. And also, I'll also show you how to do that, but I also felt that I should mention here in terms of filtering. So this is quite nice because you can then also filter by certain groups or tutorial groups that you have in your course. So the view that you're getting here, so instead of just seeing the entire class list or class, you can say, okay, I want to see how's tutorial group 2 doing. So you can then go to that tutorial group and filter by that. Of course, in my case, I don't have these students added onto tutorials, but this just gives us an indication that you can actually look at class progress, not only at a full class list, but you can also customize it to a group level. In terms of customizing the view here, I can just go to settings. Am I correct here? Yeah. And if I don't want to have the quiz performance because I don't have quizzes in my class, then I can just click on that drop down next to quiz performance, and I can just replace it. Well, replace it with something else. What can I replace it with? So I've got a list of other indicators here. Let's just select surveys, for instance, if we have surveys, and now then that will change, and I can just save and then close. So now I'll have a different. Of course, in this case, I don't have any surveys, but this is how I'll then update the indicators here.
Lubabalo, there's some questions in the chat just for the benefit of the recording as well.
Yes.
So in the first example, the student have no system accesses, but they have completed a course and completed a percentage of content. Why is that so?
Was this, sorry. Okay,
Oh,
maybe you can assist.
Yes,
Yeah.
so if I understand the question, so if the system access would show 0, but they
Yeah.
have completed a percentage of access of content or whatever the case is, it's
Yeah.
simply because the system access is limited to 30 days. So they would
Yes.
most probably have done that before, not within the last 30 days. And in a follow-up question, Lubabalo, they ask us, can it show more than 30 days access?
I'm not entirely sure, but I think that should be possible. I can find out for you.
Yeah, so because
Yeah.
Meryl, I'm also not sure, but that is a good question that we can go and investigate.
Yeah.
And then there was just another question, Lubabalo, from Melissa asking if there's a way to create a custom alert along the lines of, we see you haven't logged in X amount of days, do you require help? And I just responded to say that the intelligence agent tool is then definitely for her, because you can set that up. There's going to be a different webinar on that, but go and have a look at the staff resources, the intelligent tool. The best part is that you can automate it, so the system can do that automatically for you, and then just alert you if you opt to do so.
Yeah. So yeah, I can just share the link to those resources in the chat. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you can get more of the guides there for staff resources. I've just shared in the chat. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Nathan. I also wanted to share something here quickly. Just give me a second. Can you still see my screen? I'm sorry, but I'm toggling in between.
We can.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so this was just taken from a live course. So I thought, let me just share something like this. So you can see here that you've got much better data than I had in the previous screen or in my other demonstrations there. And here you can actually see that this course has been going on for some time, and students have been accessing the content. And as you can see, the breakdown in the second column here. And also there's been no this course doesn't have quizzes, but also quite interesting if you look at the grades. So where you're seeing the reds, those are like the alarming or very low grades, or where a student is actually not meeting the minimum score, so that makes it easy for you as a lecturer to pick up where the student is actually struggling, or which students are actually struggling. And the orangish one is just, I think it's just over 50%. This orange, or I'm bad with colors here, I'm sorry. But that's just over 50% in terms of your scoring, when the blue one would be anything over 60%. So the color schemes for now are just those three. So wherever you're seeing red, it means that the student is not doing well in that particular grade item. And if I were to just navigate to the, okay, there we go. Yeah, we did look into this, the progress and so on. I wanted to have a look at the assignments. So this is how the assignment would be shown if you were to look at it under the class progress, and it actually gives you a number of indicators also there, as to how much the student got, as you can see here. And also it gives you, for instance, the class average, how much the class is doing, or what is the current class average, and that's how many assignments that the student has submitted. So you get all those markers there. And also in terms of the grades, summary here. So for this particular student, they've completed 7 items or activities. So they've got 7 grades captured there. And also in terms of content. So this is basically more of a progress, student progress summary. Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to come in, Nadine? Am I forgetting something?
I think for progress, that's quite complete. Thanks, Libabalo.
Yeah. Are there any questions? Okay. Okay, I'm just stopping to share for a second there.
Libabalo, are you going to look at the class list, or should I quickly run through that?
Sure, you can quickly go through that, yeah. The class list. Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Okay.
I'm going to share my screen.
Thank you.
Let me just select the right one. Okay, so I'm just moving on to the class list tool. So very similar in a lecturer role or a support staff role, you will have a different nav bar here at the top than students. If you select the drop down under course info, I'm sorry, let me just ask you can see my screen, right?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So under course info, we've just looked at class progress. So the class list is situated just on top of that one, and you select your class list. And here your class list will open with all the participants. So just note that if you have a large class that you need to scroll all the way to the bottom of the course, because that's usually page 1 of how many. So everybody at UCT by default is enrolled, all the staff members on Amathuba. That's why we have like 442 pages of members here. On this course. So you can also select whether you wanted to display 20, 50, 100, 200 per page. That's simply just according to your own preference. Okay, so here you can see the class list. Similar, if a person has changed their photo, and if you have, well, for your students in class, I would actually want to encourage them to do that, because let's just see, where will I find somebody that has enrolled? But then you will see that the photo changed and you can actually identify them. So that's one of the things, if they have changed the picture here. So if I search my own name, it will typically, just show that. So it has the last name, the first name, it's got the username of the person, their email, and then also role. So what's important for you to notice is that you can change roles as a lecturer on a course. How you can unenroll people as well. So you simply just select the relevant person and then you can select unenroll. It will prompt you first to ask, are you sure that is what you want to do? And you can select yes or no, depending on what the case is. If you want to change the role of a person, let's say one of your students are now going to become a tutor for some odd reason, you can simply just click on enrollment. Select the relevant name first, and you can see that here it says select a new role, and you can simply just choose from any of the other roles that is available. I'm not going to do that as this is an active course. I'm just going to cancel, and then you can also view by groups or users. So if you're going to activate and use groups later on, you can easily select the groups and the groups will display here. And when you click on apply, you can email the class list. So if you select that one, it's just going to allow you to send a bulk email to your whole class, depending on how fast your connection is. Okay, so the page will display and there's all the users and you can send the email. You can also differentiate between, like we said, so if there's a certain tutor group, for example, that you want to email, you can select that and you can send an email to them as well. If I click on send email here, it's not going to send them. It's first going to take me to my email. That should be linked, and then I can compose the message here. Here you can decide, let's say you want to email a specific tutor group, then you can CC the tutor, for example, and they will, in this case, BCC. We BCC simply so students don't start sending emails to each other. So then you can send maybe a copy to yourself and to the tutor. You write your message in here, and when you hit send, it's going to send it from your email address then. Okay, so if we go back a little bit, so it's very intuitive. Please note there's a drop down next to the name of each student that you can also, here it allows you, or it gives you an option to either send an email. Again, you can view the progress. You can view in which groups they are enrolled. If you have a blog tool activated, you can also go directly to their blog, and then you can edit the accommodations here. So if I click on view progress here, it will take me to the class progress tool that Lubabalo has demoed to us earlier. And here I can see, okay, this is exactly the student, and I can see how much or how little they have been active on the site. So very intuitive, very straightforward. You can add multiple users at once. You can also, so I want to say just depending on the ticks. So all of that is under your control. I don't know if maybe there's a question about the enrollment of students. So at this stage, how it's going to work, you won't have to access, you won't have to add your students to your own class. There's an automatic integration with PeopleSoft, so your students will automatically be added to your courses just before the start of the term or the semester, depending on when your class starts. Oh, Melissa, I see you asking you Control F, but yes, there's a search bar. Definitely advisable if you have large classes.
I didn't see that initially, and I was like, oh my word, it will take forever. But I just wanted to ask you something on the in terms of enrollment, like sort of auto enrollment. So I don't know, this is kind of like maybe a unique situation to the program I convene in that. So normally we start quite early on in the year. So I do 2 intakes a year. We actually start in Jan and we end off later than everybody else because we have to squeeze in 4 courses. It's only a 1-year PG DIP program, so we've got quite a lot of content to get through. So what I've always done in the past, you know, I did get this approved through Senate, and it's gone through multiple rounds of review, this proposal, which was letting students access their site before they'd actually officially registered, because we're a completely online program and have historically always been. So normally what we would do is we would, you know, I would add students to their sites or to their online classroom. They'd get a notification and they could get cracking on that while they were concurrently completing their registration, because there was a lot of back and forth with SSS and PeopleSoft. So we didn't want to unfairly disadvantage our students. So is that not a possibility at all on Amathuba? Can I not manually add students, or how would that work?
Lubabalo, I don't know if you have a specific answer, but I would advise you, Melissa, to maybe write, wait, let's first hear what Lubabalo says.
Yeah. No, thanks for bringing that one up, Melissa. I think I know our tech team is working on having Classlist, you know, automatically provisioned. I know in the past where students had to, you know, access VULAP even though they were pre-registered, we had a way of actually, you know, granting students access to VULA then. Pre-registration, so they could still be added via their degree codes and so on. But I mean, in this instance, should it happen that you need students to be added urgently onto your course as early as January before classes start, you can send us a request, and you know, we can manually add the students onto your course, and you can start communicating with them. Yeah.
Okay, so the important thing to note is that I would not, as a site owner, be able to manually add students myself. I would have to send that as a request to you guys prior, right? If I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah, that's correct. So
Okay,
you can,
cool.
I mean, with most of the pilots, pilot courses this year, that's how we've been doing things. So they'll provide us with the class list, would then quickly create accounts for those students if they're first-time students, and then also grant them access to the course as students. Yeah, and as a lecturer, you'll just have to, Um, well, you don't have to worry about anything. You can just
Okay, awesome. That's really good to know, because I think, you know, and I'm not going to labor the issue, but, you know, we have so many international students. I mean, you know, we work in health sciences, our doctors are based all over the continent, them are abroad, and with, you know, we've gone through now as conveners 3 different rounds of registration processes that have changed annually. And so it's really such a struggle to keep up with new processes. And, you know, we're finally at a place now where I think we understand how this all works. And, you know, approvals process is very different now. Students who were international students had to email IAPO. There was, you know, you have to have all sorts of certified documents, proof of payment. So admin was just mind-numbing, to be honest. And you know, they, because they're an online learner, they don't have the luxury of just being able to go to the fees office or the PG office. So, you know, we have to be that support for them. But it takes time. It takes time for those documents to be reviewed and approved and for them to officially be on the system. So with my program specifically, it is imperative that those students have access. There's obviously a cutoff. They don't just get to wait forever to register. You know, we give them a deadline for that, obviously, because that could be a reputational risk as well. So we give them a deadline for having registered, and then their access would ultimately have been removed thereafter. So yeah, I'll make a note of that, and you know, I'll just really endeavor to get that through. So I think we start in the 2nd week of Jan already. So hopefully there's somebody who can help us to load students early on in the year. Yeah.
No, thank you, Melissa. But just shout if you feel stuck, and we'll be happy to assist.
Mute. It might seem a stupid question, but when it states username, I mean, what I was seeing there, I think, was staff numbers. But obviously with the students, it would be their student number. Is that correct? Or would it be their MPLID number?
That's correct. It will be their student number.
Student number, brilliant.
Yeah, and then for non-UCT lecturers or visiting lecturers, it would be either an address, an email address, as a username.
Yeah, perfect. And is there a nice way to, maybe it's because I'm in student viewer, is there a nice way to export the class list?
That's a good one. Do you want to jump in, Nadine?
Sorry, just trying to find the unmute button. So yes, as far as I know, you can either export to a TXT file. And I want to say you can export and you can even import using TXT files, and then even from CSV versions as well. So I'm not entirely sure how to do that though, but Liz, we can.
Yeah.
It is possible, yes. The long and the short.
Yeah.
That would be nice. Thank you. I like to run a PeopleSoft list and a class list and make sure that everyone's where they should be. So
Right.
I'll do a VLOOKUP to that. So it would be lovely to export to CSV if you let us know at some point. It'd be lovely.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thanks for that, Liz. Currently, what I can see is that you can just print out the class list, but it's not in that version that you would want it to be in Excel or in an exported version. But I think there is a way to do that. You can find out for you.
Thanks very much.
I think I've got one last item that I would like us to look at, and that's the checklist. I mean, I don't know how many of us use checklists in our current courses, but that's just another feature that we have on Vula. I'm sorry, Amathuba. Jesus, I need to unlearn my old habits. Yeah, maybe you could just share, or maybe spare 30 seconds where we can just share how many of us are using checklists in our course. And yeah.
And no one in philosophy uses a checklist.
Right. Melissa?
No, us neither.
Yeah, I mean, most people would use checklists just to maybe, help with student progress or help students track themselves how far or how much content or how much of the course they've covered, and it's perhaps maybe a nice way to, students feel that they've covered this much and they've achieved that much and they can check this off the list. And you could also, it's somewhat, you could use this checklist as a way of student reflecting on what they've done already. There are creative ways in which you can also use checklists in your course, but there is an option for checklists on Amathuba. And the nice thing about it is that it can also be linked to release conditions. So you can actually compel students to complete the checklist for them to proceed to the next part of the course, So you could have a checklist at the end of each either week or course section or module. And then for them to proceed to the next part, they would need to complete the checklist. So, it's another nice tool to have. Yeah. So I can just quickly show you how you would create a checklist if I think time permits. Is that fine, Nadine?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, forgot to share. Boom. Okay, so I'm sharing now. Can you see my screen? Yeah. Is it there? Yes. Okay. Sure. Thank you. So to set up a checklist. So a checklist, as I mentioned, it's also a tool, and it actually works or interfaces quite well with other tools like the content tool. So you can have it embedded onto the content tool, quizzes, and I also think assignment tool. So if I wanted to add one onto my course or to create a checklist for my course, I can just go to access my course and manage course. So go to the manage course on my navigation bar, and go into my course admin. So there's a lot that you can do as a lecturer support person, in terms of managing your course. So on Vula, this would be your site setup, whereas in this case, it's just manage course admin. So if I wanted to change my course title, for instance, for whatever reason, or if I wanted to unpublish the course, so you could still be working on the course and you don't want students to see the content, you could also come in here and unpublish the course. So to unpublish your site, so you could start working now on your 2023 course and have it unpublished by just going course information, and there should be an option here that allows you to make it inactive or active somewhere, or maybe my role doesn't allow me to do that there. So course is active. So when I want to unpublish it, I can just uncheck this so that it's inactive, and I can then save changes. So in terms of creating the class, the checklist, just go to course admin. So I'm viewing by category here. So you can toggle and view by name, and I would have to find checklist on this list. So I'll just categorize it. It's much better. And I'll go to under assessments. You'll see that you've got other assessment types here. So I'll go to checklists, and then I'll be moved on to this page. So I already have one checklist that I had created in the past. If I wanted to create more checklists, then I'll just click new checklist there, and I'll then give it a name. So I could call it maybe week 2. And I can add a description here, which is optional. And also I can state how the checklist gets published, or when students view the checklist. How is it published? Does it open on a new page, or does it just remain within the frame? So for now, let's just say it's fine. It should remain on the same frame, and I'll just click save there. So as part of this exercise, you're also required, if I didn't have a category, I would have to create a category. So before I can add an item, so an item could be completed, or have you read chapter 1, or have you read the course outline, maybe. So that could be an item. So for me to have an item, I need to have a category created. So an item belongs to a category. So if I don't have a category created here, I won't be able to add that item. So I could just say, create a new category and say week 2. That's my category for me. And then I can start adding here. So read course outline, and I can add a description here that explains that, and whether I wanted to have a due date and be displayed on the calendar, and then I can then save. If I have another item to add, I can just save a new, so that it creates a new item. So it will be listed down here. Then I can add another item again, and so on and so on, depending on the number of items that I want to have as in my in my checklist. So posted about, let's just say spelling. Save, and so on and so on and so on. Then I'll have the items there. So once I have all these created, then I can just save and close. So to then move this onto my lessons page, she's over time. To move this onto my lessons page, I can then just go content. So I've created the checklist now. So I would like to embed it onto my contents page. So my lessons page here. So I can just create a new item here, and come on. There, and I can call it week 2 checklist. And I can add a description here explaining, and click Save and Closed. Oh, come on. There we go. So I have this and I can just add an existing one. So I already created this checklist. So I can just go in, click checklist and select this, the week 2 checklist. There, it's created. So when students navigate, they will then, when they get to this week 2 checklist page, then they'll see the item here. It'll be shown and they can then go check, or they can open the checklist on a new page. But of course, I'm viewing this as a lecturer, so I'll have my view doesn't really change; it remains the same. But the students would have a different view. Yeah, you can also attach restrictions onto the whatchamacallit, the checklist. Yeah. Okay. Back to you, Nadine. I think I've gone over time here.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lubabalo. Don't know if there are any other questions. I just quickly want to get back to Liz. When I shared my screen, I didn't understand why I didn't see the function, and then I realized, oops, but I am enrolled in a student role. So just coming back to the question about the exporting of the class list. So it's actually quite easy if you are in a lecturer role. Then you just go to grades, and under grades, there's 3 tabs: integrates, manage grades, setup wizard. So select the integrates one. And there you see there's an import. So you can either import here, but we want to export. So if you want to export the class list, and here you can select whichever options will apply to you. The organization defined ID, that would typically be the student number, the username, both. I would imagine both. You can select how you want the information to be displayed. Let's say we prefer to have it first name, last name, the student name, and then the username. You can select the points grade there if you want to. Obviously, if you don't want just a clean list without the points, then you can deselect that. Again, here, last name, first name, email. And you can decide whether you want to include the final calculated grade or the final adjusted grade. You can untick those boxes, and then you can simply choose whether you want to export to CSV or whether you want to export to Excel.
Oh, that's fantastic. Great. Thanks a lot.
Great. So there you have both options. I think that's great. So the trick is just be in the right role. So,
indeed.
Yeah.
For starters. Thank you, everybody, so much for coming today.
I see Melissa's hand up. Sorry. Oh, is that an old hand? Sorry, Nadine.
I'm sorry. I'm going to be super quick. I'm mindful of time. So just from a learning design point of view, this is giving me OCD, and I have to ask you. So if you have a checklist and you've developed a checklist for every week. For us, we would do that for every module of work, because all of our courses are 4 modules. So they have a pre-assessment, they have to complete different number of study sessions or lessons, a post-assessment, a blog activity, and then they're finished, right? So that lends itself quite nicely to the development of a checklist. If you mark off each of those things on a checklist, what happens for the student? I'm just really curious about things like badges and gamification. Do they get a little thing that says, well done, you've completed all of the requisites or requirements? What happens when you complete that? Or is it just like, okay, you've ticked all the items and that's the checklist done?
I don't think, well, I'll say this under correction. I'm not sure how far we are in terms of badging. Maybe Nadine can come in this one. But
it would be cool. It would be cool.
Yeah.
Even postgrad students like incentives. And I think it's sometimes so nice to have that, because Amathuba or Brightspace is quite sort of organic. And so even on your landing page, it's you by name and it's very personal. I thought that it could be quite nice, especially for online learners. They're not doing this hybrid. That's all they have, and just as a self-directed learning purposes, that could be really cool. But I was just wondering. Yeah, I think this would be quite useful.
Yeah, no, Melissa, it's a very good and a valid question. So when we started just before the pilot process, when we had to select the tools, etc. So those, I want to say the badges in Brightspace is possible, but for Amathuba specifically, UCT has decided to, for the migration process, not activate those tools. That's the latest information that I have. It may have changed, but we are not currently working with badges. But what you can do with your checklist is, as we move on with the webinar series, we are also going to look at release conditions. And if you feel, I mean, as a student, so it is exactly for the purposes of the self-directed learning, right? And I can sense you said OCD, and my OCD when I'm learning, I also want all those boxes ticked, right? And you're working very hard towards ticking those boxes as a student. What you could do, for example, is have a release condition that the next module doesn't release until all those boxes have been ticked. However, you are running the risk if a student is experiencing particular difficulty with a specific quiz or something like that, that, you know, simply because they can't tick that box, they can't move on. So you can play around with release conditions. You don't have to set strict release conditions, for example, but that's an option that you can use as well.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, guys.
Well, thanks, Nadine. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much, Lubabalo, for your time and for sharing all the resources. If you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to just send us an email, and you can always just send an email to SILT-helpdesk@uct.ac.za, and they will forward it to the relevant person if necessary. So thank you so much for your time. And next week will be the next set of webinars, and the next one up, I think, is Insert Stuff. And if that feels like a weird name to you, that's literally what the tool is called on Amathuba, and that's mainly placement of videos, and I want to say all your different types of media on Amathuba. So that's something that's worth looking forward to. So if there are any other questions, you are welcome to stay behind. I'll stay behind a little, but for the rest, thank you so much for joining, and we hope to see you soon.